Okay, we are on the record. Good afternoon, everyone. Today is Thursday, the 27th day of July in the year 2022. This is a budget hearing to review revenues and unclassified items with the Jersey City Municipal Council. We had a scheduled 3 p.m. start. The clock on my cell phone is showing 3:07 p.m. May we have a roll call for the commencement of this budget hearing? Councilperson Ridley. Here. Councilperson Saleh.
Here.
Councilperson Solomon.
Here.
And Councilperson Rivera. Yes. And Councilperson Bajian is in the next room. He will be joining us, and we have Council President.
Okay.
So we have 6 council members in attendance at 3:07 p.m. Rich is just in the other room. In addition, at its time for its preparation, the notice of this meeting was similarly disseminated on Thursday, July 21st, 2022 at 6:52 p.m. to the Municipal Council, Mayor, Business Administrator, Corporation Council, and the local newspapers, so I can certify as to our total compliance with the Sunshine Law. Council President, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Oh, well, I guess we're coming down to the wire now. So, Carmen, go ahead with the presentation. I don't know how y'all want to do it. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, council members. So Department of Finance back here again. With me today is Director Graves from OMB, Stephanie Santana, who's our comptroller, Jeff Enright, who's the Assistant Director in the Office of Management and Budget, and our acting CFO, Jack Skura. So we'll be able to hopefully answer a lot of your questions. I think, as we reviewed and tried to prepare for this presentation, we just, are going to answer things to the best of our knowledge. And if we don't have the information here today, we'll email it to you. Okay. We'll go through the details. So I'll turn it over to Kyle so we can go through the presentation details and questions.
Just so before we do that, I'm sorry. So because the man of the hour actually just joined us. So we want to be on the record to wish our council person, Bajiano, a very happy birthday. So. That's why we're all getting the sugar high right now from you. Go ahead, Kyle. I'm sorry about that.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. So this presentation in front of you is an overview of the entire budget. We'll go through some of the department stuff that was already touched on by our other directors, some other appropriation items that may not necessarily have been included in those hearings, and then we'll touch back on any other revenue items that may need some follow-up from the prior hearing. So the first page here is just a 5-year analysis of the adopted budget for the last 4 years. This year's introduced budget of $695 million, and the employee headcounts, which is inclusive of all of our budgeted vacancies as well. All right, so we'll jump to the next slide. Slide here is the summary of our appropriations. This is just I cited the budget law for everyone for reference, just so we have some definition on what is actually included in our appropriations. And as we go through the next few slides, you'll see kind of where these tie into. So we could jump to the next slide, which is the summary of everything. Like I said, section 1 here is the general appropriations within CAPS. That is your departmental budgets and some of the unclassified items such as insurance, health insurance, utilities, which we'll get more into detail on. Operations excluded from CAP. So that is our library, tax appeals, tax overpayments, etc. We'll go through that as well. Our grants, down payment on capital improvements, the municipal debt service obligations, deferred charges, judgments, which this year is 0, our local school district debt service amount, and our reserve for uncollected taxes. So we'll go through each one. If you have questions within those, I'll address them. The next slide here is another reference to local budget law statute for general appropriations within CAPS. So every year we have a limitation on what we can increase our certain appropriations by, and this is just the statutory definition for that. Generally 2.5%. Every year we're given the option to increase it to 3.5% through ordinance, which we've done. So that number will be reflected on your next slide here. Max appropriations. So the max appropriations for our budget is $558 million. And you'll see where the budget proposals came in for us prior to bringing this draft to you, which was $622 million. And we had to make budget cuts of $64 million to kind of get where we're at. and this is a makeup of everything inclusive in that number. So you have our salary obligations, our budgeted vacancies, which are carryovers from last year, new hires that we funded in the budget this year, which have not been filled or funded before, promotions and merit increases, hourly wages, which are your part-time and seasonal employees, overtime for the city, other wages, which are inclusive of pension obligations, acting position costs, uniform allowances, materials and supplies, services and contracts, and equipment. So within this number, I made a note on the side. Last year, we were able to reduce our budget with the use of rescue plan dollars in the amount of $37 million. I just want to make note that we're adding that back into the budget this year. It's going to be reflected in all of our departments. So that's a big driver for this number right here, the $558 million. And in addition to that, we had some money set aside for unanticipated expenses as well. On the next tab, you will see that spending plan. That was how we planned to spend our dollars, before the end of the year and with the adoption of the budget. We did deviate away from some of this, which, if you've seen our interim report on how dollars are actually spent, there may be some variance, but this is generally, how we plan to spend them, and these are the reductions that we made to all of our departments, which, like I mentioned, we're adding back into the budget this year. So there's nothing new being added to the budget as far as these items go. It's just that they weren't captured in the current fund last year. So if there's any questions on that, I'd be happy to address it now. I don't want to go too far ahead because it could become a lot. So any questions?
Thanks, Kyle. I just want to make sure I'm understanding this. So I guess just looking at this $37 million, this was money used in the 2021 budget, we used ARP money to cover that, and we're not using that. We're using our own money in 2022. Is that accurate?
Correct, yeah. So this year, our second tranche of revenue from the rescue plan is $69.9 million.
Right.
Same as it was last year. All that will be allocated as revenue replacement. When we get to the revenue side, we'll have more details on it, but we have the Department of Treasury's annual growth rate for revenues. I believe it's 4.1%. And if our revenues don't meet that growth rate, the calculation gives us what our projected revenue loss actually is, considering reduction in realized revenue in locals, items like court fines, hotel tax, even lost tax revenue. So it captures all that with a formula, and it exceeded the $69 million. So that's why this year, that's all be allocated there as revenue replacement to kind of just balance the budget now, and also, kind of offset adding this stuff back in as well. So.
Got it. So just so I make sure I understand, all of these things, are these things that we're paying for this year too?
Yep.
All these items, this $37 million?
A majority of it, yes. You'll see a lot of it is COVID outreach, which we may not be doing to that extent this year. But these were costs identified in the proposals that we got last year that we knew 100% would be covered by ARPA money. So. And
we're not, just I just want to make sure, so we're not paying for anything we did last year in this budget through these dollars?
No, only if it was staff that we identified was eligible.
Okay.
Like, let's say the director of the health department, right? We were able to reduce health department's budget by a certain percentage of how much time would be allocated towards COVID work. Sure. Now, this year, obviously, we're budgeting our full salary within that department. So, yes and no. I hope that makes it clear.
Okay. I think so, and I can obviously talk offline a little bit to just make sure I understand it.
If you reference back to the departmental budget sheets, you'll see a full reflection of their budget, all their staff, and then there'll be a line for a deduction on a percentage of how much we reduced all those salaries by. So let's say there was $1 million in salaries. We said we're reducing it by 50%. All the $1 million in salaries were captured in the summary, and then also the 50% reduction, it gives us, whatever netted out to. So.
And that reduction was for last year, not this year.
Right.
Right. Okay.
All right. So we'll go to the next slide. This ties back to that appropriation cap, which I mentioned. The first two lines I didn't break out because they've already been addressed by the department hearings. Those are the total salaries and wages and other expenses within those departments. And the next few items under there are unclassified items. Some of them do tie to the operations of certain departments, and I did miss that week of hearings, so I don't know if any of these were addressed. But I'll just run through them briefly, and if you have questions, I'll answer them. So our insurance for all departments, that is for our general liabilities, workers' comp. That funding is managed by Matt Hogan in Human Resources, our risk manager. The next line is bank adjustments. Those are small fees that we pay to certain banks for minimum balances. As we're starting to centralize our bank accounts to one bank, or we're moving money to one bank to another, we are sometimes left with small balances, and we do have to pay monthly fees. But we're working diligently to kind of clean that up so we don't have this, small cost every year.
Which banks do we bank at currently?
Maybe Jack could answer that. I'm not too familiar. What banking institutions do we have?
Relationships with?
What banks do we hold? Okay, sorry.
And they're our main, I'm sorry, thank you. Sorry. Investors Savings is our main bank, and Valley, we have them, BB and something, BCB, thank you, sorry.
So we have the PNC Bank, we have Investors, we have Valley, we have BCB, and
But
Providence. It's only one account. That's pretty much it. The majority of our banking relationship is with Investors.
Investors Savings.
Okay.
And then if you just
Operating.
recall back to the cash management plan that we have to adopt every year, it has a listing of all of our banks in our cash management plan. And so as Kyle indicated, there are certain banks that historically some division departments have had, and we're working diligently to close them, to roll them over and close them out. So in our cash management plan, we do identify all the banks that we bank with, but for the gist of it, between the Investors and the banks they named there, where most of our transactions happen.
So where that leave us? I'm sorry. Investor Bank, they're changing
Right,
to Citizens, so.
yeah, so they're
we'll-
taking it over, but they still, the relation, they're like a successor, it's still the same, they're a successor company, so they might even keep Investors as their brand name, but it's still, it doesn't change our business relationship.
At all?
Unless we change it, but which I don't.
Because I want to make sure that they stay located in the hub.
Yeah,
Because I remember that going back, part of the agreement was
Was
that
that.
they would stay in the hub as
And
a
they-
bank. So
yeah.
now, since they is a new owner,
Right.
I just want to make sure the new owner still agrees with that. That's all.
So I think that we'll defer that to the business administrator
Okay.
and finance to
Okay.
review.
yeah.
When it comes to mergers and acquisitions with banks, ultimately our
Yeah,
relationship is still
those
go away.
agreements carry forward in all these transactions. They're still, the successor company is still obligated to,
Okay.
for whatever they signed into.
Okay. I just
But I
want to make
actually-
sure.
yeah.
Since we said banks, I just want to make sure.
I'm
Before
friendly
we
with,
continue, Kyle, I'm sorry, I just want to record Councilperson Gilmore, present at 3:14 PM for the record, so we now have 7 council members at 3:14. Go ahead, Kyle.
Okay, so the next line item you see there is our employee group health insurance. I did put an asterisk next to the 2021 budget and made a note above there. This ties back to the revenue rescue plan sheet. We were able to reduce a portion of that appropriation last year. So 36 million isn't a true reflection of what our obligation changes. We reduced that by 17.5 last year, just based on prior year excess claims. And this year, the total budget is $111 million. That's what we're appropriating. So every year we get an actuary report on estimates, and they give us their recommendations. We do our best to fund it to the best of our ability, obviously with the limitations in place. Sometimes, since we are self-insured, we do have to choose to reduce that because, the variance in weekly claims does vary. So, but that's where we landed this year.
Are we incentivizing employees to, let's say, get gym memberships and have like annual screenings to catch certain things, or
Health prevention.
for the health insurance plans? Like, are we doing anything regarding preventative health care measures that would reduce the city's liability and also, help?
wellness programs, health wellness.
Well, yes. Do we have any of those that are?
So we do. I don't want to speak too much on it because it's not.
It's not your
I'm not
purview
too sure.
much, yeah.
It really is the benefits office, and HR does handle that. I know we do have somebody that goes around the building and kind of offers some vital readings on employees, and based on conversations with our actuary, and they do recommend that, and it does help if they see people are participating in these types of things. As far as incentives to go to the gym, I don't think we do cover that.
Okay.
I know I see you at the gym.
I was gonna see you at the gym. I said,
Yeah. So I mean, that's really a question that should probably go to Director Rosa.
Okay.
But to my knowledge, there's no incentive for employees as far as compensation or
Just because there's
coverage
annual
and
health
membership.
screenings at certain private sector. I don't know if they do it in the government sector, but they do annual health screenings. They give discounts or have partnerships with the local gym memberships. They have they say if you meet with a health counselor, you get like $200 off. Your deductible or whatever. So.
We ain't that advanced.
All right, I'm just like, maybe that would reduce our,
Yeah, insurance, right?
Yeah, what I can tell you is I know we have Horizon Blue Cross, and I know when I was not covered through the city, they do have those incentives for people out there, but it all ties back to the employer. So that's something that has to go to HR if you want some extra information.
Can I just ask on this too? Sorry, just want to understand. I understand that it wasn't the full 36 million increase because there were 17 million.
Yeah.
But it's still, I guess, 90 to 1, roughly 111 million.
Yep. So we also.
Why is it like? What explains the increase for health insurance?
So I could pass. I have the actuary report. There's a larger document which I could share. That has some more information, but just a general summary of the costs that was provided to us. I want to pass that around. And I will say we had an additional lever that we pulled last year where we do know that we do get rebates throughout the year. Typically in a standard budget year, when we're not looking to kind of reduce taxes, we leave those credits in and build some surplus. Last year, just in an attempt to kind of offset what the school's tax increase was, we did account for those rebates within our appropriation, and that was about $10 million also. This year, we're not reducing it by that amount to kind of build back our surplus and get to a more, sustainable budget. So I'll share that report with everybody afterwards. There's many more pages and data that you could shift through. And on the backhand side of that is just a recent article that was published about the state benefit plan going up 24% or so. And if you see on the front page, I believe ours is only increasing about 5%. So it's kind of one of the reasons why we're not making that switch right now. All right, so the next few items are smaller. Something we budget for in years past, which we might start moving away from, as we get more involved with the departments and kind of understanding, centralizing things. Municipal publicity, that is for some miscellaneous advertising that the city pays for through our own goods and services, or our own paper. Other municipal advertising is stuff that we may have contracted out of the city to pay for. Professional affiliations, that is for unanticipated membership dues for employees. Maybe a department wasn't planning to send somebody to league of municipalities or something like that. But so that's what that is. And then the Ethical Standards Board is something that we have in our municipal code that we budget for every year for legal services. So if there's no questions on that, I'll move to the next few items. Electricity, street lighting should have been addressed by DPW. They're kind of straightforward. Electricity is going down a bit. We're reducing that year over year just based on prior year expenditures. Street lighting is remaining the same. Municipal rent, those are monthly payments or annual payments that aren't covered through capital leases, such as like the public safety building isn't included here. If the council wants, I could share that breakdown with you. Office services, that is also administered by our DPW. John Lynch usually oversees that account through his new division of administrative services. So we may move that funding into DPW now with that new division, but this covers all of our copiers, printers, citywide, water jugs. The next line is gasoline, and I think we all know why that's going up. Communications, That is IT director's citywide account. That is for cell phones and, anything else that doesn't pertain directly to IT. That remains the same. Salary adjustments. So this is something we try to budget every year as a contingency for increases that aren't planned for, such as union negotiations. So right now we have one union out of contract back to 2019. That's Local 245. So when that contract is potentially settled this year, we'll have to have some retro payments made and also adjust the salaries of those employees. So what I did was I scaled this to the Local 246 contract, and we did analysis on how many employees we had in 19, 20, 21, and currently, and if their contract mirrored 246, what the cost would be. And that was less than 1.2, but we left a little cushion there just in case. The next item is not something we budgeted for last year, which we'll touch on in deferred charges, but that's severance liabilities, which you pay out every year. Public safety is a big driver for that, so it is hard to include in our budget, and this has been the mechanism to pay for these things. We come to council end of the year and do a special emergency that we pay out over 5 years, and that was the last year's obligation, and a contingency amount of $100,000. That is for any unanticipated expenditures. So we can go up a lot higher than this, but it's not a good practice. So we just try to keep it pretty low for smaller things like late fees or something like that. And then on the next slide is your deferred charges and statutory expenditures. So prior bills is the first item. This is for any bills that we receive for 2020 and prior. So 2021 dollars remain in the reserve through the end of this year. But sometimes we get bills from, honestly, dating back to 2013. Purchase orders are closed, goods are delivered to departments, people leave, and these things just unfortunately come up every now and then. Overexpend of appropriations. So this is not something that we're obviously proud of, but there were some salary and wage overruns last year, specifically in public safety and the health department. So when we carved out those rescue plan dollars, like I said, we did deviate a bit from the plan where maybe we couldn't cover all the salaries for the health department that we planned to. And we do our best end of the year to cover those things through appropriation transfers. But 3.5 of this is police overtime. That was an overrun. I believe $3 million for health department salaries and wages. And I would have to get you a breakdown on the other smaller items. But we are exploring reimbursement opportunities here through FEMA. And if we do receive those dollars before the year end, we can include that as anticipated revenue to offset it. But right now, that's what ties to our initial draft at AFS, and it's something we do have to budget for. And same thing for the next item is appropriation reserves. So that is 2020 over expenditures that were incurred in 2021. Any questions on those items? I assume there will be.
How does that happen? Because I thought we were using FEMA, I thought we were using the CARES Act funding for the health department. So how did and the health department employees didn't get a pay raise, from what I understand.
So it's a combination of things. We could dig more into it, and I could provide as much detail as I can. But let's say there was a contract awarded for, I'm not going to say vaccinations because that's another issue. If there was a contract awarded for advertisement, right, that wasn't necessarily planned for in that initial draft of the adopted budget, we had to continue those services and obviously make those obligation payments to the vendors. If new staff was brought on that wasn't planned for, we need to expand the clinic nurses, and just it's a combination of things that can drive this. And unfortunately with FEMA, the reimbursement time is always an extreme lag in that. So we weren't able to get these dollars back by the end of the year, December 31st, and that's unfortunately why it is on our books as an over expenditure. So as far as overtime and stuff, right now we do notify the departments biweekly of where they're at with their payroll projections and where we anticipate them landing. But there's really no internal control for me in budget to kind of stop it. I mean, it's all kind of on the departments, and we notify them and try to hold them accountable as much as we can.
Do we know what the 900 officers are?
Excuse me?
The 900 plus officers we have citywide, I'm wondering where the overtime is going, what areas are getting the overtime, and, if they take from the North District, send to the South, then, like, I just want to know how resources are being allocated, and, not that no overtime is justified, because, sometimes public safety or issues arise, without anyone having to do anything. So, and you want to be prepared for that, but.
All right, so I think it's a better question for the Public Safety Director and Director Moody, but I know this is every year where we kind of touch on this.
Correct.
I know the information may have been provided before. Obviously, budget is in a position to make recommendations on where they staff their police officers. So we kind of we do our best to notify them, and say this week they're trending $1 million over. We notify them and say, your average pay period needs to be down this for the remainder of the year. And then we do the same thing the next week, and the next 2 weeks, and next 2 weeks, and then.
And they keep just doing it.
Thank you.
So,
Give us a couple of follow-ups on that. Specifically on the police overtime, just from looking at the other docs, I think we had budgeted, like 7.5 million for police OT in 2021,
Correct,
and
yeah.
the expenditure was something like 11 million. Is that over expenditure this right here, or did we do any transfers to address it in
So we
2021?
did, obviously, what you mentioned is about a little closer to 4 million. So there is legal lines for salaries and wages where all salaries and wages roll up.
Right.
Full-time staff. So if we come under budget for full-time staff, it kind of offsets where they go over. And end of the year, we do those appropriation transfers, but we're limited to what we can transfer because, like I said, we do still have obligations that we have to make. And it's a little easier on the other side of it with contracts that you can hold off making payments to the next year. But once the year ends, you're kind of stuck with it. So if we do have money in a reserve to cover it in the beginning of this year, it's too late as far as the AFS is concerned. And it's just, we did make transfers, I believe, to police to kind of address it as much as we could.
Okay, but I just want to make just a high level. So there's no more overtime spent that 11 something million. That was the OT spend.
Yeah,
and some of
unless-
it was made up through the salary and wage line, and then some of it is going to be made up here.
Yeah, and I believe there was there's a higher expenditure than that 11 that you see,
Okay.
which we did plan for in our rescue plan, spending plan. But outside of that, that is everything else that we couldn't cover with those dollars.
Okay, can you, I guess, get us the total then that was spent on police OT, so we can sort of see these
I
different
believe
buckets?
Stephanie, our comptroller, she does the payroll postings, so she could give you all the debits for 2021 and what it actually came out to. So we'll get that to you,
Email it to
after
you?
this meeting.
Yeah, and or you can email it to Jade as well, so you can get the whole council.
Right.
Okay.
Because we need to figure out why
Right.
they're spending a lot of
And then,
overtime. It's
and then I guess the second question would be, could the council be included on these weekly OT reports so that we are also following along?
Yes.
I would,
I mean, this is how we know, because see, every year we come and the police budget is always over. And we keep trying to figure out how we're going to, cut back or whatever. So I think if we, at the beginning of the process, maybe there's something we can do to make sure we can cut back. See, we always get at the end, So we're just trying to figure out,
so I'll defer to the business administrator in regards to, weekly correspondence on some of our day-to-day operations. But if, in a sense, you wanted like a monthly report or a quarterly report, that'd probably be the best appropriate area to do it because.
Okay.
But I would.
Just a
we'll debrief
report.
and-
Monthly would work, right?
We'll go back to them.
Yeah,
Right.
correct.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then, there's a question I was going to ask is, where are they now this year, 2022, on police OT?
Yeah, I believe Director Moody referenced that she anticipates going over the 10 million we appropriate this year. And I don't know off the top of my head, so I don't want to say, but I do know they are trending.
Okay.
Already.
Yeah, could you guys just get us the current spend down on that account so far?
I have it, I can get it to you.
Okay, great. And then just for the Hhs expenditure here, can you just give us the breakdown of what was all spent on?
Yes, I will get that for you.
And then I know that I might be jumping here, so you can cut me off, but in the revenue section of the budget, there's like 28 million under FEMA.
Yes.
What is that?
So that is for our vaccines and testing.
Got it.
So when FEMA rolled out their whatever advisement to municipalities that vaccine costs and testing are 100% reimbursable.
Yeah.
It was a decision that we made not to use the rescue dollars for that.
Right.
So we could use it for other things that weren't necessarily 100% covered by FEMA. So like I said, we spent those dollars last year for those services, and we didn't recoup all of the dollars yet. So I could say year to date, we do have 17 million of that 24. And that's why there's an offsetting revenue item. And there's also an appropriation for the 24 too. So it's essentially a grant, but just not budgeted within the grant section.
Got it. So here it's going to say over expenditure of state and local resources. Right. And then on the revenue side, it's going to say FEMA. And those two things are basically matching with each other.
Right.
And that's paying for our full vaccine and testing programs.
Yep.
Got it. And then in terms of getting this money back from FEMA here, whatever this, you said you're going to get us the details on what it was, are we able to, where are we in the process of getting that money back?
I would have to touch base with our grants director.
Okay.
She's kind of taking the lead on those submissions, and I'll get that to you.
Question: are you guys doing projections for budgets for the following years? So that I know it's something that John Metro you should talk about, doing.
Yep. So Carmen probably alluded to it a little better. She's sitting in a lot of demos. We are a little limited to with the resources that we have on that, and we do push for departments to give us that information when budgets are submitted. I'm not saying it's an easy thing for them to do themselves, but we're working on identifying a software that does do that for us. Right now, projecting costs for next year, there's a lot that could go into it as far as union contracts being settled. Like I said, they're all pretty much terminate this year, so it's hard for the department to project their personnel costs.
Right.
The most they could probably do is project what their contracts will be. A lot of those may have renewal options in them and things of that nature, but a lot of times you go back out to bid for things and you don't know what you're going to get back. So it's...
Because I think you can keep that budget stable and the taxes leveled out if you do something.
Yeah, so one thing Jeff is working on is kind of what we do for payroll on the other side. If you continue spending at this rate, this is the date you'll max out your budget. This is where you'll be at if you at the end of the year if you don't adjust. So we're doing those things internally as best as we can, and I think when we do identify new software, hopefully that'll be a feature of it. All right, so I'm going to continue into the statutory expenditures. These are our pension obligations, unemployment, Social Security. Those numbers are given to us. There's really not much to discuss. I will make one note that our Jersey City employee retirement system, that 13.3 number is coming down. The budget was introduced prior to getting that valuation report. That'll be down about $600,000. So you'll see that in the amendment. The next slide is another section of the budget. These are excluded from that CAPS number that I referenced earlier. Our library appropriation, which we went over, that is, the minimum appropriation required in our budget. Tax overpayments is up to $3 million. Reserve for tax appeals, which is a small amount we budget every year to kind of fund unanticipated payouts. Our participatory budget, state of emergency overtime, and that over expenditure that I referenced. So, is there any questions there? No.
Just make sure, so that over expenditure is covered by the revenue portion from FEMA.
Yep.
Okay, great.
Okay, the next slide is something that's already came to council, but this is a part of the appropriation side. It's the down payment for capital improvements. Those dollars are spent, so there's nothing we can really do there, but it is included in this presentation if you have any questions. All right, the next slide is our debt service obligations for this year. They're broken out by bond type, general debt, water debt, interest payments, and you'll see there's a big reduction, 21 million, which I think for the council members that have been here the last few years, we've been anticipating this drop off. So that's kind of where we're at this year, and we've issued new debt this year, and not quite too sure where it will land next year, but is there any questions on this year's appropriation?
Did we refinance? I think we refinanced some of the debt, or?
I'll defer to CFO. He's been involved in, with our bond counsel on all of those types of transactions.
Yeah, we refinanced the $125 million of, bond anticipation notes at around roughly roughly 3.5%. So we locked that rate in.
Okay.
So that's partially. Also, I think this budget will need to be amended because I think it includes Bayfront debt in here.
And we moved that over.
We moved that over to the redevelopment agency, so there'll be, maybe $3-4 million of principal and interest that might be, would be coming off of that as well.
Okay.
So, yep.
I have to leave in a few minutes, but I just want to jump ahead a second. This lowest theater, $25 million, is that a joke? That's number one.
So that, I'm not too familiar with the plans for the theater and, the scope of work and what the requirements are. I do know this is for the next few years. We're not planning to go out to bond for any more capital dollars. If you want to know more details on, how the dollars are being spent, I would kind of defer to business administrator and the infrastructure department as they're dealing with, the construction of that. And we do transfer these funds to the JCRA to kind of manage as well.
Two more questions. As I said, I have to leave. I have an affair to go to. The North District and the South District, they really don't need to be spending that much money. They should have been taken care of over the last few years. No, they should have been taken care of over the last few years.
I can't hear you, Rich.
They, 12 million and 12 million. Word is around that the city's in financial trouble. All right? I don't know if it's true or not. But I look at some of the expenses here and some of the money we're spending on things that right now should not be being done, like the North District, the South District, the Loews Theater, equipment for public safety. There's grants out there throughout the United States for police departments. We shouldn't be putting out anything. We should be getting all these grants from, for all the stuff they need. General improvement parks, the parks need a lot of work. But, if the word around is that we're in trouble financially, some of the stuff should be cut back.
So the initial planning for this capital down payment was with the uncertainty in the market and not quite sure knowing what the next few years are going to entail. We wanted to put together a list of projects that we're going to need to fund over the next few years so we don't have to continuously come back. Whether that 12 million isn't just for this year, I know it's for the next 6 years at least. That's what our capital plan entails. And these are the goals of the administration. And, we were able to include this down payment for this project in the budget. And that's kind of all I could really.
And this came to you before, right, earlier this year in our ordinances, and the city's nowhere near its borrowing authority with capital projects. And when it comes down to the numbers, we will defer to the department directors, but I will speak as a former community development director who did a lot of financing and projects in the city. We used to do affordable housing projects, $20, $30 million, and it was never enough. So this is actually quite conservative in regards to the other funding gaps. And to the other point is that we did establish by ordinance a division of grants that's headed up by Vivian Webb, who's going to work to the details to collaborate on our different sources so that we can get there. So these numbers in our capital borrowing are actually very conservative, and to the projects that we need to afford, there needs to be a more fluid plan. And so we did hire someone to help manage capital, Dennis, to help us work out all this portfolio work, but ultimately these are very conservative numbers when it comes to development.
Well, the only thing I'm saying is, look, I'm getting my back broken. I'm sure the other council people are, between the school tax, the taxes going up, and everything. And a lot of this stuff should be cut back or maybe held off for a year or two. And we should start worrying about lowering the taxes for the people of this city. I have to go, but.
Is there any collaboration with the Board of Education BA in terms of their budget? Because obviously, they've allocated like nearly $1 billion for their budget, and I'm just wondering what degree of collaboration there is between our, BA and the BA over there. And I know there's been some acrimony, but I just internally at the
Yep,
BOE.
so, I mean, obviously that's a question for him. As far as the budget's concerned, the board of ed, we do have shared services that we pay for, and that's the extent of what I'm privy to. I'm sure, John Metro does work diligently with the board of ed, or at least try to. So, but I do think if you have questions on that relationship, you should probably go to him, because I'm not.
There is a relationship, and they're trying to work together. Is what I'm trying to get to. Is that okay?
I would.
All right, guess not.
Yeah. Not saying no, not saying yes. It's just
I'll talk to John
me.
Metro.
Yeah.
I was just trying to Councilman Boggiano's point.
Understood. So moving forward, the next section are deferred charges excluded from caps. These are those special emergency notes which I referenced earlier, and as the just definition from local budget law. And on the next page is a breakdown of those items. So there's reference to the prior year ordinances that were passed and our current year obligation, the budget. It's up from 9.4 to 10.5, and that is due to the special emergency that we declared at the end of last year of up to $10 million. And going back to the prior pages, we spent 8.4. So next budget year and the next 4 budget years, that $2 million will be reduced, I believe, to about 1.6. But that is a makeup of that amount. Any questions?
Do we have an anticipated number for 2022?
Yes. So we're trending kind of towards the same as we were last year, about 10 million. And we'll bring that back to council, when the time comes. What we can cut, if we could cover anything with unfilled positions, unused overtime, we will do that. But we have to see. We're still got a ways to go, and it's kind of hard to say, how much we will, have to, do.
Right now, we anticipated at 10 million.
Yeah, I would say at minimum, yeah.
Okay.
All right, and then the last slide for appropriations is our reserve for uncollected taxes. That is a statutory requirement, kind of definition, and what goes into it. That's just it's based on the prior year collections, which was 99.31, which is great, and we're still required to appropriate excess of $5.9 million in the budget. And like I said, there's nothing we could really do about that. There's no negotiating there. That's a statutory requirement. If we collect 100%, it'll be 0. If we collect 98, it'd probably go past 10 million. So, tax collections are very important for that reason. But, that's our requirement there. And that wraps up the appropriation side.
I'm still trying to figure out.
Councilman, you just need your mic.
I'm still trying to figure out departmental head salaries and the metric for measuring this. Because last time I looked, I think all of the departmental heads is at the maximum threshold. So I'm trying to. Who would that be a question geared to? Because I asked it several times and I haven't got an answer yet.
Yeah, so I did follow up on that with the law department. Within our municipal code, those statutory positions are excluded from the departmental head amount of 175. There is I believe there's a state statute that references if there is a certain increase for department heads, we have an obligation, a certain percentage. But, that should defer to the law department on that. I'm sure it was ran by them prior to any adjustments being made or not being made. So I would defer to Peter Baker on that. And if we do have a requirement to adjust any statutory officers, we'll make sure to address that in the amendment.
So we don't have a metric basically.
I'd have to reference, like I said, the statute.
Can you clarify, because I have sat in hearings that you're asking the question again, and I'm not sure.
Yeah,
When
so-
Human Resources was here, the director and the BA, to clarify like exactly what you're asking.
Yes, so basically what I'm trying to figure out, the ordinance was set to cap directors not to exceed 175, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Who makes the determination to allot the maximum of the allocated allowment? Who makes that determination? What is the metric for determining that determination? Like, what are the criteria that have to be met?
So if you recall in like the BA's presentation, it was his purview, the law department and HR in doing the analysis of this. And that if you can also recall when they talked about like the pay equity study that they did a few years ago in trying to develop this kind of sort of compensation plan, that kind of sort of metric went there. Before I became a department director, it was set at a particular range. So it does get updated and reviewed periodically through the years.
Well, I just want the record to I just can't understand how every departmental director is at the maximum threshold, given past performance, given coming out of a pandemic, given the increase of cost of living into all over. I just can't understand how.
So salary performance and reviews of department directors fall under the purview of human resources. So you would have to, probably dive deeper into that, and whatever can be shared of personnel records of directors and performance and other standards, that is a human resource function.
But isn't the salary set by the council through ordinance?
Well, you guys have to,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
But we set
The
range.
range.
Range, yes.
Correct.
Who gets
okay.
exactly who
Yes.
gets there?
Yeah.
Oh, the range.
You have to go to HR and.
Yeah, that's more of I think a deeper dive, and I think maybe if you need to have a closed session or something to that nature, but ultimately, from a finance perspective, our responsibility is to budget in for these amounts, have the sufficient amount of salaries in there, and manage the process and that determination.
From a finance perspective, if we were to loop in the clerk's office, the tax assessor, would that be financially feasible? If the council was to loop them into the definition of department director, because, I feel like they certainly act like one. And is that something that
So I
is
think,
financially?
again, that's a legal interpretation and human resource interpretation. If
I mean-
we are told that we have to budget it for, we are going to do the process that we need to do, make sure that it's covered. So I deferred to the business administrator. I think in legal, in regards to like where you think other divisions or departments or codes kind of sort of should be.
Okay. That answers it. Thank you.
Okay, so.
Okay.
So, I just want to go back to the max appropriations slide. I just want to make sure I understood it. Can you just explain what budgeted vacancies 2021 means?
So those were positions that we had budgeted in the prior year that weren't filled. So let's say last year we introduced a budget for
Right.
DPW with 10 labor positions, and we only filled 8. That would be the carryover there. I do have a breakdown by department if you would like me to share that. I have it here, but I'll share it afterwards because there's quite a bit of information in it.
That'd be great. So basically, those are positions that we budgeted for, weren't filled, but we're intending to fill.
Correct.
Then we have the new hires that were budgeted for in this budget. Then we have the promotions and merit increases. Hourly wages, part-time and seasonal, 3 million. Is that total, or is that like additional to what we had done in the past?
That is total. A big bulk of that is our traffic guards and recreation seasonals.
Yep. But that's not new. That's just
No, that's
'cause
pretty standard.
Yep. OT. And what is other wages?
So those are our pension obligations and some smaller items like uniform allowances, acting position costs. That's what
Okay,
I
yep.
was budgeted for. And any comp time, yeah.
Okay, great. And then I apologize if I missed this at the HHS hearing, but it looks like the appropriation numbers for 2021 were off in the budget doc for all of HHS. I can show you offline.
yeah.
Okay, I'll show you offline.
I
what
can
it
say
looked
I
like.
didn't prepare their presentation.
Okay.
I didn't get a chance to review it prior to our
That's
presentation.
okay, yeah, I'll show you, because I just want to make sure I have the right ones, and make sure I didn't
The
miss
budget
anything.
document is the correct.
Got it, okay, yeah. But
Not what they presented.
yeah, I'll show
I'd have
you
to say, yeah.
what I looked at. And then, cool, are you going to do revenues now, or are you?
Yeah,
Were you, because we did a version of that with the director.
I mean, I have the same presentation. I wasn't here for the last one. I didn't receive any specific questions on it. So if you have any, hopefully I could answer them.
Sure. Well, why don't I make, yeah, so if I can, that's okay with everybody. One was, could you break down the sale of properties for both 2021 and 2022?
Yes.
So which specific properties made up both?
I could tell you it's references to payments. There's $251,000 that we received from the New Jersey Department of Transportation. I believe they bought a parcel of land from us, and the rest of it is 7.5. That is the sale of some commercial street properties to the MUA. That went to council in December, but we didn't receive that cash
Got it.
by the end of the year.
And do we have any additional sales or anticipated for 2022?
Not at the moment, no.
Okay. And then, well, I saw that 69 million in the revenues for COVID.
Right.
I guess my concern is a very big picture, is taking a very big picture step back, and you guys can see if I'm missing something. But my very big picture concern is, I assume we're done with our ARP money after this year.
Correct.
So that's a $70 million miss in the next year for revenue.
Yep.
And then we got the land sale. We'll see. That's another $7 million potentially. And then it's not like there's a corresponding one-time expenditures on the appropriation side, unless I'm missing something. And so I guess what I'm worried is that look, I want to fund everything because we have 1,000 things that are important, but I'm worried that we're sort of we're setting ourselves up for a big increase next year or some other adjustment. And let me just am I accurate? Am I missing something? Where are we in that very big picture piece?
So for next year, we're not anticipating those two revenue items, obviously, which is at the surface could seem like a big gap, but we do bank on our other revenues kind of rebounding back to what they were. We're currently exceeding what we're anticipating this budget by, I believe, about $7 million dollars on the local stuff alone, court fines, hotel tax. So as those things come back to full strength and kind of back to that annual growth rate that the Department of Treasury expects us to see, we'll be able to anticipate some more revenue in those items. And as our tax base grows, obviously last year we reduced our tax levy by about, I think it was like $100 million. So naturally, keeping the same rate next year as the valuations increase and our property valuation increases, we'll have some wiggle room there as well without having to, increase the impact on tax dollars. But right now it's hard to say what that will be. We're exploring other opportunities, mending revenue items as much as we can. Jack's auditing abatements for properties that may owe us money and things such as that. So it's a moving target right now. I wouldn't say it's going to be $70 million, $75 million gap, but it is a concern, obviously, for everyone. And, we work to make sure that our first goal is to have no tax impact in every budget. So it's kind of hard to say where we're going to end up next year, though.
Yeah, I mean, I that's helpful to kind of get all that context. I would just say, it just, in part because we do these calendar year budgets so far down the road, we're obviously 60% of the way through the year already, whatever. But I just really worry that, look, I want all those new hires because we know how hard everybody in the city works and how difficult it is. I just don't think we can have it, given the huge increase this year.
Right.
And we don't know what the schools are doing in 2022, right? We don't know what their budget looks like. I just can't see us as a city. We obviously had the one-time thing with the reduction last year, and I think people understand that. But I just don't think anyone's going to accept us on the municipal side increasing taxes next year.
Right.
And I assume with look, if you talk about small 1% to 2% inflation, but I'm sure there's going to be huge COLA increases in all of our union contracts. Would be my guess. You guys know better than me. So I just really worry seeing that one-time gap gone next year, and how do we plan for that next year?
So I could tell you, as far as on the appropriation side of that, we are trying to account for those types of things. within our salary obligations, vacancies, new hires, we're budgeting the full salary for any employee, regardless of hire date, anticipated hire date, to build up a surplus. So hopefully, the next year we have, more surplus revenue as well, and kind of build ourselves a cushion and also a sustainable budget. Whereas in years past, we made a lot of attempts to prorate salaries. Say we anticipated hiring someone in July, we'd cut the salary in half in some instances. But then next year you're stuck with increasing your budget by that amount. That won't be the case now, assuming it stays the same. But those are really the only levers we could pull as far as what's currently budgeted. We'll take any recommendations on new hires and vacancies, but I will say the administration's been pretty thorough in organization chart reviews, and we're trying to build, like I said, sustainable budget and like operations within every department that are kind of maximizing what they do. And I think these are pretty vital positions. So, like I said, it's not up to me, but that's just what the budget's made up of.
Yeah, no, I get it. Look, I'm not saying it's easy.
Yeah.
It's going to be a little, if we think folks are mad now with the tax increase, and it's not on you, it's on all of us, right? It's to figure it out. But just looking at that at a big picture, that was just a huge concern that kind of rose for me. Because if all this revenue is sustainable, then you look at next year and you say, well, it's not like we have a gap to make up.
Right.
But we are going to have at least some portion of a gap. Yep. And it could be big.
Yeah.
Jack, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'm going to just call this an observation because,
Jack.
nobody can project the future, So there's on the plus side, I'm seeing some things that are positive. Actually, I hate to even bring this up, but the payroll tax, I'm keeping an eye on that. So the last few years, it's been trending 61 million, 66 million last year. This year, through half the year, we've collected 46 million. And this is not to toot the audit department's horn or anything like that, but we did some work and that created it. But also I think it's a sign that the economy's coming back, or had come back, and so that's positive. With inflation, maybe there's going to be more from the pilot revenues, and then as some of them terminate, they're going to be going on conventional taxes. And this is, if we're a little hamstrung in finance, but I would, in a perfect world, I'd love to be able to put more science to those comments to project a little bit better. But so that's something to be optimistic about. Then on the other hand, there's recession talk,
Right.
So and that's where I think Councilman Solomon's concerns are valid, and that's what we have to be prepared for as a team. So that's all. I just wanted to,
And
share that.
also to back to the FEMA point, the federal government is allowing FEMA reimbursements till the end of the year. So I think the planning and analysis for for calendar year 23 and mirroring what we're trying to do, to Kyle's previous point, that in trying to forecast or trying to put a plan together, we could only look backwards and then try to project forward. And so Jeff has been working on some kind of sort of projections with us to see what would be sustainable, and considering we're so late into the year, into kind of sort of getting ahead for next year, that the two budgets kind of sort of coincide so that we can get the things to work together. And in collaboration with Councilman Youssef's point before, like we do definitely work collaboratively with other areas to see what we're buying, what we're doing, and what we're collaborating on. But there is, management and collaboration, I think, on all parts.
And then I had one other specific question, which was at the revenue hearing, but I don't know if it got back to you, Kyle, which was, and Jack, if you had this, was the amount of money. Have we looked at how much we're getting on the foreclosure registry? How much money we're getting out of that?
I did receive something, and it's very, very de minimis. I thought, but there was an issue. Dinah Hendon, I'll send you the email. There was some concern, something limiting her in her ability to collect it. But it was like under $1 million, I believe. So.
Okay, I mean, I think when it was, if you could forward that. I mean, I think when it was originally passed, I want to say 2019. Yeah. I mean, I think we were anticipating it being at least a couple of million annually. Okay. Now maybe projections changed, but it was in the discussion anticipated as a reasonably large source. Yeah. And then no matter how big it is, though, can we make it a line item in the revenue section?
Yeah, I don't see.
As long as there's not a dedicated use for it, and it doesn't have to go towards specific operations, I don't see why not. I'm not too familiar with the item myself.
Yeah, I don't see any, yeah.
So Jack, I did reach out to Dinah, being that that was my former department.
Yeah.
So Councilman, in 2021, there's $230,000 collected in the foreclosure registries, but Pro Champs was terminated by the county. So if you remember, the foreclosure registry was
Right.
coordinated with the county, who they terminated it, and we just went into collaboration with the county to collect that, and then Pro Champs was to receipt that money into us. In HEDC's budget presentation on Dinah's slide deck, she actually copied and pasted the response to that, because that was, in a sense, a lost revenue and kind of sort of changed, but we at the city didn't manage that. We were a receivership from Pro Champs. And she says we do not have the, to enforce foreclosure registrations, since 11/1/21,